Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Yusuf Ertem. Israel's bombardment of Gaza eclipsed the one-year mark with no signs of stopping. Rather than discussions about a potential post-war Gaza, the region is plunging deeper into conflict. With more than 41,000 Palestinians killed, many survivors are left feeling isolated. Now global attention is shifting to Israel's invasion of southern Lebanon and fears of an all-out war with Iran. Yet amid this turmoil, Turkey has emerged as a steadfast ally to the Palestinian people. And that solidarity was on full display in Istanbul over the weekend. Nili Kozad has more.
A year has passed, but the pain and suffering continues. As the 7th of October approached, demonstrators across Istanbul took to the streets demanding an end to Israel's brutal war on Palestinians.
We're here to say stop to the Zionist cruelty. For almost a year, but this actually started earlier. As you know, since 1948, there's been cruelty in Palestine, but no one's doing anything, even though the world knows about it.
From the start of Israel's assault on Gaza, both Turkiye's politicians and the public have been steadfast in condemning Israel's disproportionate use of force. In Istanbul, a university hosted a 3-day Gaza conference focusing on the implications of the war, reflecting Turkiye's commitment towards Palestinians at every level. And while the government pushes for a ceasefire diplomatically, humanitarian organizations like AFAD and the Turkish Red Crescent have been active on the ground, providing support to Gazans.
We are in Gaza. We were in Gaza before 7 October. After 7 October, what we did is we mobilized sea shipments from Turkey in coordination with our government, AFAD and NGOs. A collective Turkish effort has resulted with over 15 airlifts from Turkey and 12 sea shipments. Altogether, this means 60,000 metric tons of humanitarian aid was sent from here to Gaza since then.
Ankara's mobilization for Palestine isn't new. The two countries share deep historical and cultural ties, with many Palestinians seeking refuge in Turkey. And with nowhere else to go, recent escalations have prompted Palestinians to turn to Turkey for safety, support, and even medical treatment.
Patients were transferred to Turkey, those critically injured. So they have been treated in hospitals in Turkey, in different provinces, and they are being sheltered now by government with our support too.
Israel's war on Gaza has resulted in nearly 42,000 civilian deaths and nearly 100,000 injuries, many of whom are women and children. But instead of de-escalating amid rising international pressure, Israel has expanded its conflict by invading Lebanon, opening a dangerous new phase. After the assassination of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah from a targeted Israeli airstrike, Iran responded by launching missiles towards Tel Aviv. And since then, concerns mount in the region over potential Israeli retaliation, a move that could have severe repercussions for the entire region and beyond. And although it is hard to predict what will happen next, one thing is clear: Turkey will not shy away from its solidarity with the Palestinian people, offering a safe haven for those affected by Israel's aggression. Nili Kozad, Straight Talk.
And for more on Turkey's efforts to achieve peace for Gaza, joining me now from Doha is Tamer Qarmout. He's an associate professor at the Doha Institute for Graduate Studies. From Istanbul, Hazar Vural, an assistant professor at Istanbul Aydin University, and Helin Ertem, an associate professor at Istanbul Medeniyet University. Thank you for joining me. Now, Tamer, I want to begin with you. The one-year mark. We woke up October 7th to a surprise, and the general feeling on October 7th was that a sovereign state has the right to defend itself. When, over this past 1 year, did Israel's actions go from the right to self-defense to human rights violations, war crimes, accusations of genocide? Is it one event for you, or is it the flow of events?
Yusuf, it's a very good question, and I'll talk from my perspective as a professor in public policy and as a Palestinian as well from Gaza. The starting point of this discussion, and I'll quote the General Secretary of the UN, is that the acts or the attacks of October 7th did not start from a vacuum. I mean, it started from a legacy of one of the longest occupations in modern history since the establishment of Israel. So the roots goes to the continuation of the Israeli occupation of Palestinian territories and land. And Palestinians, of course, have all rights, all international rights to resist such occupation. If we want to focus the picture more on Gaza, the Gaza Strip before the October 7th has been living in a very dire situation. It has been labeled, and in reality, it is one of the largest prisons on earth. There is no normal life there. Israel keeps attacking on daily basis. So there is nothing normal about the living situation of the Gaza Strip. I think, my opinion, the 7th of October attacks started, I mean, they were accumulated based on this background, the legacy of the prolonged occupation, the dire situation in the Gaza Strip, where the governors of Gaza, per se, the Hamas movement, thought that this dysfunctional status quo cannot continue, especially that there is no perspective whatsoever for a decent peace process. The international community has let go of the peace talks. Arab countries have started normalizing. So the argument here is that something has to happen, and this is where the 7th of October attack started. Now, the repercussions or the ramifications of these attacks and whether they were strategically correct, whether things have gone wrong, of course, this is another discussion. But back to your question, does Israel as an occupier has a right to do what it did in Gaza before and after October the 7th? The answer is definitely a big no. And Israel's response to these attacks is now labeled as genocide. So, I mean, I don't think we need even to spend more time on this. I mean, there are arrest warrants against the Israeli prime minister, against his minister of defense, against many generals. So we are even beyond this stage because there is now so many evidence and indications that Israel is committing genocide.
Okay, thank you. Hazar, Tamer views this as an extension of events. Is October 7th a beginning, a middle, or an end for you?
Sure, it's not the beginning of anything because we can say that everything started maybe 100 years ago. You can say 1948, 1917 with the Balfour Declaration, or in the end of, let's say, 20th century. So I think nothing didn't start at October 7th. So maybe it is the latest point for the Gazan people or the Palestinian people, because everything was changing at that time, and the idea of a sovereignty state of Palestine was forgotten by so many actors in international relations. We were talking about the normalization of some Gulf states with Israel, with the help and support of United States. So maybe for the Gazan people, of course, it was not easy to live under that conditions in Gaza Strip. So they want to create their own freedom via starting this move against Israel.
Helin, how has public opinion changed over this time and also the attitudes of countries towards Palestine?
Well, if it's a part of the rise of the global South, I claim. You know, there is a kind of tectonic shift in world politics, let's say, in global politics. So there is the rise of the West, which we see either under the title of BRICS or under other organizations. We see the rise of China, India, and so on. But lots of countries, from Brazil to China, India, Russia, Turkey, Iran, of course, so many countries underlined the worst case that we are witnessing in Palestine, which is a devastation of a nation. So for sure, this is a genocide. For sure, this is a total attempt of annihilation of a nation as Palestinians. For that reason, I think what we are witnessing in history at the moment, as IR experts or ordinary citizens of the world, is a change in world politics. And this change is somehow being motivated by Palestine as well. So in my point of view, Palestine will be one of the cracking points, one of the turning points of world history in the future, which will bring us the end of the American hegemony as well. So we will somehow witness, maybe in a very short time, maybe in a very longer period, but we will witness the end of American hegemony. And Palestine and United States turning its blind eye towards Palestine and somehow tolerating Israel's these devastating attempts in Palestine will be a very critical date for the future of the world. And this will bring the end of American hegemony, in my point of view.
Tamer, even if the end of U.S. hegemony is realized, the U.S. is still the most powerful country in the world. It says it wants a two-state solution for decades now. It says it wants a ceasefire. It says it wants to see hostages released. It says a lot of things, but its actions sometimes don't seem to back up its stated desires. What are your thoughts on the U.S.'s report card over the past year?
Yusuf, I mean, this war in particular exposed the extent to which the U.S. is not only supporting Israel to commit genocide, it is indeed a partner of Israel in what's happening, by providing not only weapons or political support or protection in the UN, but also by helping a rugged personality, a politician like Netanyahu, who also faces a very strong Israeli opposition internally to commit what is he committing now? And then expanding this war beyond the border of Palestine to involve Lebanon now, and we don't know whether Iran will be also involved. But again, the U.S., it seems to me, historically, the U.S. involvement in this region is very vivid and very strong because it has vast strategic interests in the region. But there were historical moments where the U.S. was able to stop and change Israel's discourse. And I know this is a short program, but I'll just talk about the Israeli-Egyptian war, where if it was not for the U.S. interference and stopping Israel, we would not have a peace agreement between the Egyptians and the Israelis. What I'm trying to say is that historically the U.S. was more involved and was more able to put brakes on Israel. But now, over the last decade, we have seen this shift in U.S. policy where, in my opinion, for internal reasons that has to do with the strong lobby, the strong Israeli lobby in the U.S. and the way they influence politics inside the U.S., where I get this feeling or this understanding that the U.S. more or less has left Israel to do what it wants in the region, and there is no ability anymore inside the U.S. to critically question Israel's behavior, even when it comes for pure U.S. interests. I mean, let's not forget that the U.S. has most of the countries in the regions are key allies to the U.S., including Gulf states, including Egypt, including Turkey. So from a pragmatic point of view, you need also to address the concerns of these key allies who are not happy with what Israel is doing.
Thank you for that. There's a lot of ground to cover, so I do want to move on. Hazar, regional war. This started in Gaza, but we've seen fighting in West Bank. We've seen Lebanon airstrikes. We've seen airstrikes in Syria, Yemen, a tit for tat between Iran and Israel itself. How real is the scare of regional war? Well, first of all, has the regional war started, or will the regional war be realized in the second year?
Via hitting the 5 states at the same time, Israel did a lot to expand this war to the region. But from the logical perspective, it shouldn't, because it is like zero-sum game for everybody, every actor in the region, or we can say not just in the region, globally. Nobody is not searching for a expansion of the war, just unfortunately Tel Aviv. Because raising the escalation, it is not good for the future of the region, because when the armament increased a lot, it is so obvious that the future will not be in a better position. Or territory of conflict began to expand via Israel, escalate the crisis. So actually, starting from Washington to Tehran, every important actor in this issue, they said that we do not need more war in the region. So everybody calls for the de-escalation or the Israel to stop. But since April, we observe that Israel is so willing to expand the war. What could be the aim of Israel to doing this? Or if they succeeded, what they will find next to them? Of course, the United States endless support, because we saw that the air defense system of Israel is not working very well. So now some things changed a lot about Israelis' security or how they feel themselves in the region. So United States cannot left Israel on its own via helping armament and lots of aids. They are here to support them and protect them with their all navy and everything what they have. So Israel is trying to do escalate the tension, expand the war, so United States and the rest will be ready to protect Israeli concerns and interests.
Helin, Turkey has been a very important actor throughout over this past year. Now, when the fighting started, Turkey tried to have a very balanced position at the very beginning, hoped to maybe even mediate, but we saw a shift in Turkey's position, and now we see Turkey very, very firmly with the Palestinian people and a major advocate for Israeli accountability. How have you seen the shift in Turkey's position over the past year, and what has Turkey provided Palestine with?
Well, in the beginning, in the very first events in October 7, there was an attack from Hamas against Israeli civilians as well. For that reason, it was quite natural, quite logical for Turkey to try to preserve a kind of a balanced tone regarding its relations with both Palestine and Israel, and especially regarding its image in the international world. But day by day, the suffering of Palestinians increased. More than 40,000 people, most of them women and children, have been killed in the last 1 year. For that reason, it's quite understandable for Turkey to take a position, to take a stand nearby the Palestinians, especially when Turkey claims that it will be one of the defenders of the people oppressed all around the world. So if you are trying to gain your image as the defender of those oppressed people of the world, then you have to be with the Palestinians. So this is a part of your official foreign policy as well. But what I see, especially since President Erdogan's latest speech in UN General Assembly, is that Turkey will continue to force the international community to use the international law procedures, especially the international organizations like United Nations. So what we saw in Erdogan's speech is the underlining of the role of United Nations General Assembly, which will somehow bypass UN Security Council if it's somehow having a kind of deadlock because of one of the vetoes of the permanent members. So there is a way in international law and in the United Nations as well to be able to somehow stop the aggressor country, which is Israel in our case. And I think Turkey will push hard, will continue to push hard to use this channel, which is Resolution 377A in United Nations Charter, let's say, which allows ordinary members of the United Nations, ordinary members of the international community to somehow take a position to stop the aggressor state. And I think this will continue in the coming future.
Tamer, do you have any faith in the United Nations to be able to stop this conflict?
Tricky question, Yusuf. I mean, the United Nations as a political organization has its pros and cons. I mean, it is the only international political system that we have inherited post-Second World War era. It's not a fair system, to be honest. I mean, it does not represent the global will of most countries on the world as it stands now. It does not represent a fair distribution of power of today's realities. I mean, my colleague was talking about the BRICS, a new emerging multipolar world. The UN is still stuck in this colonial past, more or less. And on the political level, of course, you need the consensus of the 5 veto players to make any resolutions work. On the administrative operation level, once the UN has a mandate, the UN is a good organization when it comes to development assistance, aid assistance, humanitarian assistance. But without this political will, it becomes a dysfunctional organization. Now, when it comes to international law, of course, I mean, we have seen this double standards and complicity in applying international law, especially like when it comes to the cases Israel. I mean, compare this with Russia, Ukraine, and you will see the striking differences. So the international law is now under attack. I mean, and this is why you see more countries from the global south, third world countries, you know, non-allied country, if I'm to use this term, trying to protect this international law and asking for unequivocally applying it to anyone. But we are not there because the UN, as it stands politically, it is not a fair organization. It's politically dysfunctional and it needs to be reformed. And that's where we stand now.
Hazar, the International Court of Justice, that's another platform where countries have been seeking accountability for Israel's actions. How do you view South Africa's case, and how important was it for Turkey to support this case as well?
Well, South Africa was the first one who knocked the door of the Court of Justice, so they wrote their name to the history with a good place. Turkish Republic was right after them and were ready to support with Palestine and stand with Palestine in this court in this case. But we know that international law inside had some problems. It takes some couple of years to finish this case. And unfortunately, since December, I think it was started in December, this court, since December, the first time, unfortunate events happened about the judges in the court. We see that some political pressure by United States to protect Israel. And Netanyahu did a lot to save himself and his policies and his government. But actually, if they succeeded to finish this case in a normal way, I think the result is obvious since today, because every rules, everything is so clear that this is a genocide and what they did in Gaza against basic human rights. And it is not just 42,000 people, Palestinian people. They did much more than that. So I believe in the end, the law, the case will finish and it will written also to the history.
Helin, is it too early to talk about a post-war Gaza right now? Or will we be hosting the same show again with the three of you next year?
Well, in today's world, the wars are not the wars in the 20th century. Everything is changing. We are now talking about hybrid wars, cyber wars. We are now talking about actors, especially armed non-state actors in the regions like the Middle East and elsewhere. For that reason, I think it's very hard to estimate that this war will be finished soon, unless the international community somehow altogether decides to end what Netanyahu is doing, which is a very, very difficult mission at the moment. Somehow we might expect that there would be a kind of new president in the United States, either this is Harris or Trump, which might somehow say that, okay, let's start again. They might think about getting rid of Netanyahu because his job is already over. He has done what he was supposed to do in the Middle East regarding the Palestinians and the neighboring countries as well. So somehow, either this is something artificial, the United States and Israel might try to make a fresh start, which will, of course, is not a guarantee that the same things will not happen in the coming future.
Tamer, Qarmout, Hazar, Vural, and Helin, Sari, Ertem, thank you for joining me in reviewing the past year in Gaza. And that's all for this edition of Straight Talk with me, Yusuf Ertem. If you got any comments, please share them with us on X at Straight Talk TRT. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Until next time, take care and goodbye.